Welcome back. Well, let's focus on NCC. They've reviewed their revenue guidance upwards to around 32 to 33% for this year, for a year-on-year basis. Mr. Sharma, the head strategy at NCC, joins us on the show. Hi, Mr. Sharma. Good morning, and thanks so much for speaking to us here on CNBC TV18. Well, a couple of quick questions before the code of conduct sets in. The order inflows will be something that the street will be focusing on. I think earlier you were guiding for around 26,000 crores. You're at around the 21,000 crores odd. Do you expect to stick to this guidance?
Sure. At the very outset, very good morning, Nigel. You are right that, the order inflow guidance that we had shared with the street, it was, 26,000 crore. And as we speak, we have already booked about 82% of that number. That is 21,238 crore to be, precise. And as we speak, we continue to, stick to the guidance that we have shared with the street. We are quite hopeful of hitting that number by end of this fiscal.
Okay, all right. So we've got that out of the way. Now, for FY24, you've gone ahead and upped your guidance, which is good news. Street will be very, very happy about that. But what it does sometimes is it adds a lot to the base, which makes the next year a little bit more challenging. So to call it mathematically. But with the kind of order book that you have, maybe in fact anything is possible. So could you tell us for FY25, what kind of a revenue number are you targeting? You could give us a broad range, revenue growth as well as revenue.
I fully agree with you. Well, let me bear with me for a couple of minutes. The way we work in the infrastructure business is, whenever we talk about a future number, number in terms of revenue and margins, what we essentially do is we try to look at each of these projects individually, and we have about 150 odd projects. So we try to look at each of the projects and then try to assess in a realistic manner what is the execution that we can do for each of these projects, and then we work out that number and share with the street. We have not started that exercise, That is something that we would be completing. Then we would, seek the approval of the board. And I would be very happy to come to your show and, share that number in May, because we have to take the approval of the board before we, announce that number. So that is something that we typically do in May.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
We're looking forward to having you on our show.
Mr. Sharma, hi, good morning. Just to pull
Good
back
morning,
just to pull back a little bit and look at the slightly bigger picture. If you look at FY25, the budget that we've just seen from the government, right? Two areas. Roads has seen allocation in FY25 by the central government, which is only 3% higher as compared to FY24. Last 3 years, roads were seeing between 50 and 25% growth in allocation. This year, it's 3%. The other segment is housing and infrastructure, which is also seen around a 3% higher allocation. So the absolute amounts are higher, but the rate of allocation has actually come off quite sharply. So those are two segments which I think are important. Now, I understand this is central government budgets and state governments that will be still spending, and you have to look at that. But do you forecast any slowdown at all in FY25 if numbers are what they are?
Not really. As if to take, leaf from your playbook, we have already booked, good amount of orders in this financial year as well, For example, we are sitting at an order book of about 57,440 odd crores. So even if I were to accept the proposition that you are talking about, that there might be possibly some slowdown. So still we have, sufficient amount of orders are already available with us, and all that we need to do is to go out and execute. And this is what we have successfully done in the last, 3 quarters of this fiscal. So even if there is a slowdown, but I think the larger picture possibly is not the, decrease in allocation. You are aware about, the elections are around the corner, and, that might slow down, the pace of the award for a couple of quarters.
Got it.
So, but we have nothing really to worry about. And typically in any financial year, the 80% of the execution comes from, mostly the existing projects, the newer projects. Let us say that if we bag a project in this order, the contribution in the next financial year will not be, very high from these so-called new projects. Most of the execution is done from the projects that we have already backed. The drawings have already been approved. We have already mobilized,
Mr. Sharma?
So that is not something that really worries us.
Got it, got it. That's about the order book. I wanted to understand a little more of what's happening with the balance sheet as well. By when do you expect to get the receivables from Sembcorp? How much have you received so far? What are we looking at in terms of the timeline?
Sure. So as we had, shared with you, in the last conversation that we had, in the award, we were to receive about 197 crore from them. And I'm happy to report that in this quarter, we have already received about 147 crore from them. So 50 crore is the remaining part of the money that we have to get from them. But we understand that, they have decided to challenge this part of the award. And that is something that we will have to wait and see how things really pan out.
Okay. And what would all of this mean for your debt levels? What is a net debt at currently? Do you have any scope to bring it down further in the next 1 to 2 years?
Sure. We have already shared a guidance in the call that we had a couple of days back, in which we have already shared a ballpark number of about 1,300 to 1,500 crore by end of this financial year.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Sharma, could you tell us what are the potential orders and revenues you're expecting from the Jal Jeevan Mission?
We already have a very healthy, order book from this Jal Jeevan Mission project. As we speak, the total order book would be close to, a little less than 18,000 crore. And we continue to see healthy pipeline of projects in this space. And on case-to-case basis, we are bidding for all these projects, and we are quite hopeful of bagging at least a couple of them in the next financial year.
Okay, all right. We'll leave it at that, Mr. Sharma. Thanks a lot for joining in and speaking to us. That's NCC with their view. But